If you like this channel and what I do here, please help to support my work by checking out one of my books, available from Lulu Publishing and Amazon.com. Thank you. Hiya folks, welcome to Electric Media Madness for another Rewatchable, joined by Dan Ryan. How you doing, mate?
Good.
We've picked 5 episodes from Season 6 of Deep Space Nine, which I consider them to be classics. Not all Star Trek fans would think that, but certainly they might think that at least 2 of them are classics anyway. I think they're all classics in their own right, but just for very, very different reasons. Season 6 is a great season, isn't it? I mean, we're pretty much there now. We're not that far away from the end in terms of you watching it. But you did say, didn't you, that you thought Season 6 was a really good...
From the ones I've watched so far, yeah.
Okay then, so the episodes are Statistical Probabilities, Far Beyond the Stars, Inquisition, In the Pale Moonlight, and His Way. So we're going to start with, normally when we talk about these, we go rattling on about the plot for ages and ages. So I'm just going to be reading out a very, very brief plot synopsis so that we can jump straight into the things that we want to talk about, things that we found interesting. Statistical Probabilities. It's a Dr. Bashir episode. And in the episode, Bashir is working with a group of genetically engineered, socially maladjusted savants to try to help them become productive members of society. And whilst this is going on, Deep Space Nine also hosts a peace conference with the Dominion. We have Damar and Wayoon show up to the station. And Starfleet basically give the genetically engineered group some information about the Dominion and that kind of thing, and ask them to be like a sort of a think tank and think about better ways to fight the war, how they should sort of deal with the Dominion and things like that. And they basically lay it on the table. You need to surrender because you're not going to win this war. And then like Sisko's like, surrender, not on my watch. But that really is it. They try to secretly get the information to Wayoon and Damar at the end, but Bashir foils them and stops them. Some great little scenes there with that, but we'll talk about them. And that really is it. And they, at the end, they say to Bashir, you know, if we come up with any other ideas for how to fight the Dominion and beat the Dominion, will you listen to us? And he's like, yeah, we'll listen. You know, so, and that's really where that episode sort of ends. Great introduction for these 4 characters: Jack, Lauren, Patrick, who's hilarious in it, and Serena, who doesn't say much, but she does get more in a season 7 episode when the gang comes back again for another episode. Nice little interplay. Jack the psychopath who tries to break Serena's neck at one point just because they won't get rid of this buzzing noise in the cargo bay and things like that. Really, really great group of characters, interesting dynamics with things going on there, and a great little Dr. Bashir episode as well. So, shall we jump into our discussion, our notes?
I was just happy anyway, because it's a Bashir episode, and I very much like Bashir episodes.
Yeah, he tends to be one of those characters that gets a bit sort of overlooked when people look back on Deep Space Nine. But, and he was annoying in the first season or so of Deep Space Nine, but he really grew into, you know, to become a really a really likable character. Helped by his interplay with O'Brien as well, because them pair really bounce off each other really well. And whatever people might think about it being a plot MacGuffin, I think that him being revealed as being genetically engineered also really helped his character. It really took the series off in some interesting directions, which we see with this episode, and another episode that we're going to talk about, the Inquisition as well, really goes down that path as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So
I like the Bashir episodes that I've seen so far, like, quite a lot, and this one, it's like, as you said, it's got like a really good dynamic. Like they all play off each other really well, and he just wants to like help them become like active members of society like him. You know, theirs didn't turn out quite as well as his did.
No, it didn't, did it? Yeah. And he says that in the episode, doesn't he? Their parents probably didn't take them to the same quality doctors that mine did. And he talks about it as well, and saying, because Worf makes that very snide comment about, you know, because I've been allowed to be in Starfleet, all this kind of thing. And Worf's like, well, I'm sorry to upset you, Doctor. I didn't mean it like that. But he's like, no, you know, because he's sort of saying that there, but for the grace of God, go I. You know, I could have turned out like them. You know, they'll never be able to serve in Starfleet or anything like that. He was very, very lucky, wasn't he?
There's quite a lot of great moments in this. Like one that kind of like, it's not a specific moment, but like they're so focused on like the facts and things, they can't see hope or anything like that.
That's right.
They're like the only things they can't really accept that a miracle could happen or something they don't expect. They're just like, we will lose. There's nothing we can do. Like, surrender now. And seeing everyone else being like, yo, what the fuck's wrong with you? Was just like, it was,
And Bashir actually goes along with it for a little bit, doesn't he? Because you know, Sisko says, I think I've got the quote from it here somewhere in my notes, but he's like, well, you know, if we go down, we'll go down fighting, you know, so that future generations will know what they're made of, kind of thing. And Bashir's like, well, how noble of us, you know. It doesn't matter if millions and billions of people die, so long as we fight to the bitter end and all this kind of thing. How noble of us, how brave of us, you know. He's being really snide, isn't he, about it? But even he sees that, because at the twist at the end is that they completely, the three of the disregard Serena, don't they? Because they think she's like vegetative sort of thing state, pretty much. I mean, she's not. I mean, she's ironically in the next episode we see her in, she's even more vegetative than this one, and they forget that she was slightly with it. She was aware of things because she gave them the information about how that plant could be transformed into Ketracel White for the Jem'Hadar drug and all that. So she gave them that information. So she's not completely, you know, out of it. But when they clear off to give their information to the Dominion, she's left in the cargo bay. Dr. Bashir's tied up, and she unties him and lets him go, so that he can go and stop them before it make a fatal mistake. And he says that to them at the end, doesn't he? He said, "But you didn't predict her doing that." Yeah. So that kind of shows that, you know, you can't always be right about everything. It's those like you say, the little things that you can't predict, the unforeseen things. Those are the things that change the world sometimes, you know. I mean, I, with my alternative knowledge research, know that a lot of the things that happen in the world are steered and are controlled. Very few things happen accidentally or just by coincidence. But on saying that, there are still things that do happen sometimes that are completely out of anybody's control, completely out of anybody's predictions. You know, a small group of people or an individual can sometimes just change the world, even if it's just in a very, very small way. You know, so control is never an absolute thing. Being able to predict things is never an absolute thing. Far from being an absolute thing, actually. There's little tiny things always creep in there and change what happens, you know. So, yeah. Well, like you say, hope as well. That's another thing, isn't it? Giving hope to a previously hopeless situation. Yeah. So did you want to... any other notes for you? I've got a few other bits and bobs that I wanted to go through. But
yeah, that was mostly it for that one.
Okay. Some of the little things I picked up on was Damar now being the leader of Cardassia after Dukat went a bit weird. But he seems to be a very reluctant leader. That's something that plays out as the series goes on. He's always arguing with Wayoon. And when the genetically engineered gang are sort of watching the recording of the negotiations and all that, they lay it out, don't they? Which is really weird, because Jack says the Pretender who killed the king and seized the throne. The Pretender finds himself in league with a dark knight who can't be controlled. He said, no, it's not a bad story, really. Epic, really. And I was thinking, that's really meta, because they're actually talking about things that happened in the show, story. So it's the writers saying, our stories are pretty good, aren't they? You know, they're almost epic. You know, so I thought that was, and there's lots of meta moments actually in these episodes, but you know, in this one as well. Wayoon and Damar arriving for the Peanuts, and Wayoon's like, Major, how nice to see you again. He's really slimy, isn't he? You know, forgetting what happened when they were occupied Deep Space Nine and all that, you know. And he's like, it's as if that never happened, you know. Patrick is great in this as well, you know, when he keeps crying all the time. They should put him on Discovery.
He'd be perfect. They'd make him like the Grand Admiral or whatever.
Yeah, the Grand Admiral. And funnily, you should say that, because that's something that happens when they come back in season 7. How they get onto the station is they dress Patrick up as an admiral and have him walking around. And the only line he just keeps coming is, whenever anybody asks them an awkward question they can't answer, he goes, That's a stupid question. And they go, sorry, Admiral, sorry, sir. So you saying that about the Admiral, it's amazing how you picked up on that. But yeah, he should be on that, yeah. Some interesting foreshadowing of things to come, because when they're talking about the data that they've got, and Bashir says, according to analysis, the Romulans will vote to abandon their non-aggression pact with the Dominion. So that's an interesting little bit of foreshadowing for a few episodes from now. I love the bit when it's really bizarre and almost surreal. You know, when they're dancing to the Blue Danube and all that, and they're like going la 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 la,
Yeah.
you know, and all that kind of thing. And Patrick tries to put a party hat on O'Brien's head, and he's like, oh, and he starts crying again. And all that. It's just really surreal, the whole setup there with the dancing and all that. But I liked it. I liked that. I thought it was really good how they did it. And they talk about that line where he says, do you want to go and play with your friends? Lauren says to Bashir, go play with your friend, we'll be fine. And Bashir says to O'Brien, do you want to play with me, Chief? And he's like... So just little comedy moments like that in it, which are brilliant. The banter between O'Brien and Bashir when they're playing darts as well and all that. And he tells them, oh, they like you, O'Brien, because they think you're uncomplicated. And he's like, are you trying to say I'm thick? Yeah, we mentioned as well about that great little speech where Sisko, surrender to the Dominion? Not on my watch. If we're going down, if we're going to lose, we're going to go down fighting so that one day our descendants will rise up against the Dominion. And it's a great little speech, that is. Bashir losing it a little bit when he's playing Dabo, and he's getting all arsey, and he's like, there's no way to win, you know, and Quark's like, it's just a game, you know. When we mentioned about... Oh, yeah, there's another one. They're walking down the corridors, and Patrick walks up to a complete stranger, and happily he says, hello, I'm Patrick. And Jack goes, Patrick! And just drags him off down the corridor. Another brilliant one as well was when Odo confronts Weyoun and Damar. They're waiting for them in the cargo bay. They think that they're coming to give the secret, and Odo walks in. And they're not looking at each other. Odo goes, Weyoun goes like, founder, and all this kind of thing. And Odo goes, yes, I know. I honour you with my presence. So I just thought, you know, he's like really taking the piss out of that whole sort of founder, we worship you kind of thing. Yeah, and I love the message at the end as well. Bashir, one person derailed your plans. One person changed the course of history. Now, I don't know about that, but that makes me think maybe, just maybe, things may not turn out the way you think. And I love that message. It's hopeful. It says something about, you know, anybody can make a difference if they try hard enough, that kind of thing. So, you know, I really like that. Great big snog from Lauren as well to Bashir at the end. He's like, well, I'm going to say goodbye. And then she's like, took him by surprise, that one did. That's it really in terms of my notes for that one. It's a great little episode. It really is. Yeah. It really is. So then, shall we move on to our next episode?
Yeah.
Yes. Far Beyond the Stars. Captain Benjamin Sisko is worn down by the stress of the ongoing war with the hostile Dominion. During a visit from his father, he experiences dreamlike visions of a black science fiction writer facing racism in the mid-20th century. It's actually the 1950s, isn't it, I think? Yeah. New York City. The main cast of the series, along with several recurring cast members, portray 20th century versions of themselves in Sisko's vision. Those who play alien characters appear in this episode, usually without their alien costumes and makeup. And also mentioning as well that the visions are being brought about by the prophets. It's yet another of those examples of the prophets sort of getting inside Sisko's head. And there is some foreshadowing of things to come as well. Let's go for it then. Let's go down the rabbit hole with this one.
I mean, from the, watched it's a bit of a weird one going into it. Because you're not really sure what's going on till sort of near to the end when you click that his father, who's like a preacher kind of guy,
in the vision,
he's basically a prophet or whatever.
Yeah.
And it takes you until that really clicks. It's a bit of a weird, hey, what's going on sort of thing.
Which is, it's an interesting bit of foreshadowing for where the series is going to go. Yeah, I mean, all the characters are effectively prophets. You know, they're conjuring the vision, but they're taking all of everything that he knows about his life on Deep Space Nine and that, and conjuring up these characters, So, like we said, we've got Joseph Sisko visiting the station, and Sisko feeling the weight of the war, isn't he? He's really like, he's almost considering packing it in, isn't he?
Well, he kind of is at one point, yeah.
It's another bit of foreshadowing as well, that is, for the end of the season. But yeah, he's tired, he's weary, he's despondent. And he says, I don't know how much more I can take, how many more friends I can lose. Maybe it's time for me to step down, let somebody else make the tough calls. And I think that really, even before you get into the 1950s stuff, it's one of those things that, again, of many, many other examples, that gives Sisko his depth, it gives him his humanity, it makes him a real character, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He's not this sort of on a pedestal hero kind of thing, that there are elements of that with Kirk and Picard to some degree, like this larger than life kind of thing. But Sisko's, he's down to earth, isn't he? And he's he's certainly the most human of the captains, I think. Probably one of the most human characters of all the characters in Star Trek, I think, Sisko. Which is a real credit to Avery Brooks' acting, and also to the writers, how they portrayed, put the character across.
He goes through a lot in this episode. Like,
yes,
he's just trying to get. He's got this story in his head he thinks like a genius, brilliant story. Everyone he showed it to thinks it's a brilliant story. And it's basically the story of Deep Space Nine.
It is, yeah.
And he just can't get it published because the captain's black. And then they're like, maybe if you say it's just like, I can't remember what they say. What was it? If it's a dream from like a shoeshine boy or something like that.
Yeah, because
we'll
first of all,
published.
yeah, because I think it's Pabst, the character that's played by Rene Auberjonois, Odo, basically, the head of the magazine. He's like, well, you need to change it to a white character. First of all, that's the first thing they say, don't they?
Yeah.
You'll have no problem getting it published then if it's a white character. And then I can't remember, like you, I can't remember which character it says it, but they do say, have it be black, but give it like, it's almost like a shoeshine boy having a dream, wishing for a better world, a better life kind of thing. I think it's Herb, Quark's character in the Vision. He's like, making it a dream guts it, guts the story. And he's like, well, it's better than chalk on a pavement, at least it gets the story out there. And then they're like, well, how will you be able to write subsequent stories to it if it's a dream? And they're like, well, no, let's get the first one published first, and we'll worry about that afterwards, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's very much this way of trying to get stories out there to the public, especially in a time like that where, there are other issues in this episode as well, because we talk about it being, people talk about it being exclusively about the struggles of black people during that particular period in American history, but also there are references to the struggles of women as well in this episode, because you've got the Kira character, Casey Hunter, the science fiction writer, and there's that scene where Pabst says the owners of the magazine want to do a photo shoot of all the writers, and he's like, she's, well, I suppose I'll be staying home that day, and they're like, yeah, as far as our readers are concerned, Casey Hunter's a man. That's the reason why she has to use like the abbreviate, KC Hunter. And that's a wonderful reference to DC Fontana, who wrote episodes of the original Star Trek series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine. For years she had to exist under that sort of DC Fontana sort of pseudonym kind of thing, because she, God forbid anybody would think she was a woman, a female science fiction writer. And a brilliant writer, fantastic writer she was as well. So it's great that they're not only just talking about the black issue, they're talking about women as well. Their rights and their ability to do just as good a job as anybody else. There are some fantastic female science fiction writers. Female writers are plenty, and that. Some fantastic black writers as well, even going back then. And they do say in this episode, they're like liberals, that sort of left-wing, how would you call them, sort of magazines that write about black issues and all that kind of thing. but not in the mainstream kind of thing. That actually was true to quite a large degree. But yeah, it's and Benny says, "Oh, I suppose I'm staying home that day as well when they take the photos." And he says it again, doesn't he? He says, "Yeah, as far as the readers are concerned, you're as white as they are."
Yeah.
Which is disgusting, really, when you think about it, isn't it? You know that how such a world could exist, but there you go. It's the conceit of those kinds of attitudes that were around in those days. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're really showing it. They're really, really laying it out for all to see in this episode. This is how you do it. This is how you talk about these issues. I mean, we talk about like Doctor Who, for example, when they did the Rosa episode. So disingenuous. It was point scoring in the way they did it. You hold that episode up against this one, set in a very similar time frame, similar issues. Which one works? Which one really gets you and makes you think? I know which one gets you and makes you think.
Easy, yeah.
Far Beyond the Stars, easily, hands down.
With the others, the ones that do it badly. Like, let's just use Doctor Who's Rosa for an example.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it's just people sitting there like, oh, I got called this and I got called that sort of thing, and like, it's them just. Not that that's like not an issue, but
no, absolutely
like,
it is.
But that's the extent of it, really. This, like, you're seeing people beaten for being black. You see, like, like their whole community is just so segregated because of race. And there's so much emotion in this episode, just built around that.
And very controversial in that it uses the N-word in this episode as well.
Yeah.
Because that was the time that it was in use. It was there. Black people used it amongst themselves for whatever varying different reasons, and white people used it to insult and degrade black people, didn't they? So highlighting that as well, very brave move. I can't imagine how that word would ever get put into anything on mainstream television nowadays.
No,
even if it was even in the historical context. That's the issue, because if you're going to portray the historical context accurately, it's got to be warts and all. That's what makes people think. That's what makes people look at it and think, shit, that was bad. You know what I mean? And people might say, "Oh, that's really trite the way you've just said that, like that. Oh, that was bad." But it was fucking awful situation for a lot of people. And if you're going to make people think about these things and learn the lessons from history, you've got to show it like it is. You can't sugarcoat it. You can't edit history. You can't. You've got to. And I assume that's the reason why. Well, certainly in my Deep Space Nine companion, I've been reading about it before we start this video, and they said that was the reason why they put it in there, because it needed to grab people, really grab their attention. It needed to be as realistic as it could possibly be.
Every scene is showing something, and it's like even if you don't sort of, if it's not in your face, but it's like it's showing it, and it's like. You'll see some kind of like racism or discrimination or something in like every scene, and it's just it's just sad because they're just fucked, really. Like they have no chat. Like in this, he's a genius writer basically, and he gets sacked because of the color of his skin, even though everyone else, all the white people there are like, wow, this story's really good. And that does create a little tiny issue I have with the end of the episode, but we will come to that.
But yeah, absolutely. These are his peers, white or black or whatever, however you put it. These writers in his room with him, excluding Pabs, and all that. But there's no issue of who's white, who's black, who's male, who's female. They are just brilliant writers in this room together, all in their own little specific fields. O'Brien, the role that O'Brien Colmeany's playing in this, he's more into robots and all this kind. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. They're just great writers working together, They appreciate their talent, their craft. They sit and read each other's stories and give them constructive criticism on how to make it better and all this kind of thing. Because we see a scene, don't we, where they're sitting reading Benny Russell's story. Darlene, who's played by Terry Farrell, who's like Dax, Darlene, the secretary, and she goes, "Oh, she's got a worm in her belly," which I thought was great. Yeah. And she goes, "Oh, that's disgusting. It's interesting, but it's disgusting." And then you get Kira saying, "I like this major character. She's a real tough cookie.
Yeah.
Science fiction needs more strong women." And I'm always saying that, aren't I? And as she's saying it, you see her as Kira for a second as well. Which is so meta. It's like outside of the box. This isn't just a show about putting the issues out there. It's very clever. How did I put it? This is the best episode of the Twilight Zone that never aired on the Twilight Zone. That's what I think.
Yeah.
It's got all of the touches of a classic Twilight Zone story in it.
I suppose
the twist at the end and that very surreal thing, like when you see him at his typewriter and he looks out the window for a second and he sees his reflection, but he sees Captain Sisko, doesn't he? For a second, and he like rubs his eyes and he looks again, and then he sees Benny Russell again. And that scene I was saying about where Casey Hunter's talking about female science fiction writers, and you see her for a second as Kira. The harrowing scene where the coppers are beating up, and the actors are obviously I can't remember Jeffrey Combs, who plays Wayoon, and Descartes as well, and they're out of their makeup and they're the coppers, and you see them really pummeling on him, but for a second you see them as Descartes and Wayoon, don't you?
Yeah.
And then it flips back again to them being the coppers, and it's like a really surreal sort of, almost like a kind of a nightmare, which is very apt for this episode, isn't it? It is that sort of thing. And then when he sees the priest at the end, which is dad's sort of prophet type thing, and he said, you are the dreamer and you are the dream, and all this kind of thing. And it's very hopeful. And that's what I like about these kind of things as well. When you get that twist, like the Twilight Zone, but you get that hope at the end, and he says, what if it wasn't a dream? What if this life we're leading, all of this, you and me, everything? What if all of this is the illusion? Maybe Benny isn't the dream. We are. Maybe we're nothing more than figments of his imagination. And that's fantastic, because that's basically saying this show, Deep Space Nine, it's born out of somebody's imagination, as is the meta story of Benny Russell in this as well. Yeah. And funnily enough, Star Trek has done it before, because in season 6 of The Next Generation, they did an episode of Professor Moriarty and the holodeck coming out into the real. Anyway, they do this kind of ruse thing, and they put him into this device at the end. And Picard says, what if our reality is just a recording playing in a device on somebody's shelf? I was thinking, that's how we're watching it now. Yeah. It's in a device on the shelf playing away. That's, so it's that meta thing of Star Trek, which is really clever. And I must say, give credit to the original writer of this episode is Mark Zickrey, who has a fantastic channel on YouTube called Mr. Sci-Fi. And he really calls out what's happening to Star Trek now. He really does. He's written for Babylon 5, and his resume is endless. He's got a series that he's doing at the moment, Space Command, which he's been putting together for a couple of years now, I believe. But the key thing about this, going back to the Twilight Zone thing again, is Mark Zickrey wrote, I have it somewhere, I'm not immediately on me, but he wrote one of the most comprehensive companion books to the Twilight Zone. And if you watch the Blu-rays and the DVDs, he's on many of the commentaries, talking to the directors and the actors and all that. He's a dyed-in-the-wool, thickened sort of fan of everything, laps it up, the Twilight Zone. He knows that show inside out. So I think you can see that here with this. I mean, he's also a dyed-in-the-wool science fiction fan. It's not just the Twilight Zone. But I really, not enough credit goes to Mark Zickrey for this episode, because it was his baby, it was his story, and it's really credit where credit's due. It's a fantastic episode. And then lots of little meta things like write the words, Brother Benny, write the words, the priest and all that. And it's like, let them see the glory of what lies ahead. And it's a fantastic summation of pre-2009 Star Trek, the ethos, the message. Let them see what lies ahead. This is the future. It's a fictional future, but it's hopeful. It's optimistic. Mankind is out there together. All races, colours, creeds, sexuality, gender, the works. We're all out there together exploring, fantastic message. How horribly it went wrong with Kurtzman and J.J. Abrams. And, he's like, write the words, let them know the glory of what lies ahead. It's almost ironic.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah. I can say so much about this story. I have got two other little things I want to get into, but I'll get back to you for a minute.
There's just like basically everything's good about this episode. Like, there's just so much going on in such, like, the build-up in such a small time.
Yes.
It's just insane. It's just insane.
That's how you write it. That's how you write it.
Mm.
Yeah.
You can see why it's Avery Brooks' like favourite episode.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's a tour de force with him. His acting is incredible in this.
Oh yeah.
It really is. Yeah.
Like when he
all of the actors in it are fantastic. But
the acting when he like breaks down at the end is like phenomenal.
Yes.
It's so good.
Yeah. I'm a human being, damn it. He's saying it, and I would just quickly mention I do feel maybe it's just me, maybe it's my perceptions on the world that I don't believe that those. I don't believe that those people that are there for you, those people that support you, that you should always try to avoid lashing out at the ones that care about you, support you, encourage you, love you, or whatever. You really should try never ever to do that. Even in your darkest moments, your darkest night of the long night of the soul kind of thing. Don't turn on those that have always been there for you. So I do have this one tiny little issue with that there, because I understand why he's doing it, because it's almost like a fever that he's in at that moment in time, isn't it? It's like, I'm a black man and white people are dragging me down to a level of superficiality and labeling me in such a way that I cannot contribute. This story that I've written, it cannot be there because I'm a black man as the writer of it. What a fucking stupid, pathetic reason for that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But those writers were around him and they encouraged him and supported him. So when he has that moment where he collapses, he does kind of lash out at them. And I thought it was, and I saw I keep forgetting the name of the character. Colin Meaney's character in it, the one who likes the robots, he's a bit sort of forgetful. When they're taking him out on the gurney, and he gently places his walking cane onto his, and all this kind of thing, and they're holding him, they're cradling him on the floor.
Yeah.
They're not standing there gawping at him or worse, laughing or anything, or demeaning him in any way. They're cradling him, they're holding him. Helping him, supporting him, trying to do everything they can for him. They know this world is not right and it shouldn't be like this. And they do wish that they could do more. They say it in the episode. We really wish that we could do, make the world a better place and change this. But he does lash out at them. And I think everybody's different, obviously. Would I do that if I don't know. Until you're in those shoes, you can't, you can't say how you would react.
Yeah. So
that's but that doesn't detract anything from. I understand it comes from a genuine place. I understand completely where that character, because it's not the case. People might say, how could you possibly understand? You're a white man, But I would point out that this story lays it all out for you, so you can empathize. You can understand, because they're telling you from A to B to C. They're laying it all out for you. This is what's happening. This is unless you're thick and don't understand it, it's clear. That's the wonderful thing about this story. It's all there for you to see. So you don't have to be, it doesn't have to be a case of what defines your ethnicity or whatever at the end. Anybody can see it if they take the time to see the story. They can see it, they can understand it, and they can empathize with it at the end. That's the beauty of being a human being: is empathy, compassion. It's something that we've really gotten away from in society nowadays. It doesn't. What people need to do that a lot more to feel for other people. Anyway. Yeah. So, unless there's anything else you wanted to say. Anything else you wanted to say?
The one thing as well, quite a powerful scene. At the end of the episode where Sisko's just looking out into space.
Yeah.
And then he sees like Benny looking back at him, and the episode ends there. And that was just a bit of a like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's powerful. It really is.
Well, the whole
powerful.
episode is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not spoiling anything for the end of the series where I do tell you this, but the writers did and ah. They did contemplate having a final little coda in the very last episode of Deep Space Nine, where he would wake up and he'd be Benny Russell, and the whole series was Benny Russell's story. But they felt it would be too out there.
I think a lot of people would have got angry at that, I would imagine.
Yeah, but they do bring Benny Russell back at the beginning of season 7. I'll leave that one for you because you haven't seen that yet. I'm not spoiling anything by saying that the character does come back, but it's very interesting how they do it. It really is interesting how they do it. So before we finish our synopsis, unless there's anything else you wanted to say about this episode, I do want to tell my little story because you recognised that, didn't you?
I did. As soon as I saw it in the episode, I was
on my wall.
That's in your room, yeah.
Yeah, which is it's a replica of the drawing that Benny Russell gets in the episode, which is what inspires him to write the story Far Beyond the Stars in the episode. J.G. Hertzler, who plays General Martok in Deep Space Nine, he plays Roy Rittenhouse, who's the magazine's artist in residence. So he's doing all these drawings and he's handing them out to handing the sketches out to inspire the writers to come up with their new stories. And he gives that picture to Benny Russell. So I went to a convention many years ago now, and J.G. Hertzler was there signing autographs and that. So I asked him to sign. I don't know if you can make that out there. To Carl, success and greetings, General Martok, J.G. Hertzler. So I asked him if he could sign it for me, but he didn't know why I was getting him to sign that. And so I had to tell him, I had to explain to him, look, in the episode Far Beyond the Stars, you played the artist in residence at the magazine. You drew that, your character, sorry, not you, but not J.G. Hertzler, but his character, Rittenhouse, drew the picture which set the whole story in motion, inspired Benny to write the story. And so he thought that was fantastic that he was getting to sign that. Yeah. It is cut down from the original size. It's how I ended up with it, but it is one of my treasured possessions. That is, I love that. It's that original picture signed by the actor who played the artist who drew it in the episode. So, yeah. But he didn't know. I suppose actors don't remember every single role they play, do they? He knew that he played General Martok in the show, obviously, but he wouldn't have remembered it. And he knew, as soon as I told him, he knew. He was, oh, yeah, I remember that now, yeah. So that's great. So our next episode is Inquisition. And this is basically Director Sloan of Internal Affairs turns up at the station and says, we've got a Dominion spy. And we're going to start all these interviews, questioning the crew. And it turns out that he thinks that Dr. Bashir is a spy for the Dominion. And subsequently, he's trying to prove that he's not. But he's questioning reality as it goes on. Was I really a spy and all this kind of thing? And Sloane's like, yeah, definitely you are. I had a son who was killed in an attack on this convoy, and you probably gave them the information that caused them to do the attack and that. But there is a big twist at the end of the episode where it's revealed that Director Sloan is actually working for Section 31. This is the first time we see Section 31 in the chronological sort of, the airing history of Star Trek anyway. And Sloan is the head of Section 31. It certainly appears that way anyway. He wants to recruit Bashir. He says, I'm satisfied that you're not a Dominion spy at this point. So I want you to join, with your genetically engineered mind and all that. And he says, no. But Sloan's like, you will. I'll be back this way again. You will. And then the little coda at the end, Captain Sisko says to him, next time Sloan turns up, you're going to take the job, because we need to find out what's going on here. And that really is it for that episode, isn't it, in terms of plot? So thoughts for you, first of all. I've got a few thoughts, not as many as Far Beyond the Stars.
No. I haven't got as many for any of them as I did for Far Beyond the Stars.
Yeah.
I kind of, when they beam Bashir onto the Dominion ship.
He's getting away! Stop him! When they beam him out,
I saw the twist there. I was like, they're in the holosuite there. So that maybe killed it a little bit. Not that I didn't enjoy it. It's still a really good episode. I kind of it killed the twist. Me predicting it so early.
But you don't really know exactly what's going on until he says, I'm from Section 31 and this organisation has been around since the beginning of Starfleet and the Federation, and we're completely autonomous. We don't answer to anybody, and we want you to. It's only really the whole thing's laid out at that point, then, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you're right. You do question whether he might be a spy up to that point, don't you?
Yeah, and then you're like, okay, this is in the whole suite or whatever.
No. That's right. Yeah. But I love the way. They intersperse all the little things throughout the past of Bashir's episodes into this. They build the case, don't they, as to whether he would be...
It's kind of like... Yeah. It doesn't line up here. You feasibly could actually be a spy.
Yeah. You helped those Jem'Hadar in Hippocratic Oath. You gave them... you tried to cure them of their addiction to Ketracel White. You helped... you encouraged these genetically engineered savants to give information to the Federation and then tell them to surrender. You were taken prisoner. You were impersonated by a changeling on multiple occasions. You were taken prisoner by the Dominion for 5 weeks or whatever it was, 6 weeks they say. And when Worf and Garak showed up, the runabout was just floating there in orbit. It wasn't blown out of the sky or crashed or taken away or anything. It was conveniently left there for you to escape. And all that circuitry in the wall for the communication system. And Sloan actually says that, a bit convenient, isn't it? And he actually says that, And you're thinking, yeah, it was. But that's clever, because it was, as far as I understand, they didn't intentionally do that. It was just a little plot hole. It was a plot hole that they needed to get away to get them off the prison camp in that two-part story. So they couldn't think of any other way to do it other than just leave the... And people said afterwards, that's one of the things that's a bit of a problem with that episode. But now they've addressed that by saying, he was a spy, So, and you really do think it for a minute. You think, shit, yeah, that's why they left it there, so that he could escape.
Yeah.
So that he could come back to the Federation and spy on them. And that scene where Wayun's teasing and tempting him, sort of thing. Do you remember the first time I gave you scones and all this stuff? And he's thinking, and you're thinking, shit, he really could be. He really could be. But at every point throughout this, Bashir does say, no, I'm not. I'm not. I know I'm not. And he says, your genetically engineered brain, you could compartmentalize the information. You wouldn't know. And there is a brief moment where he says, I'm not sure now. But that kind of comes just before, like you say, the beam away, doesn't it? So, anything more then for you? I've got a couple of other bits, but
I mean, not a huge amount goes on during this episode. It's mostly just him being interviewed, saying I'm not a spy, and they're trying to prove that he is, and that's not really.
And I love the way how we must mention about William Sadler as well in a minute, but playing Sloane. But I love the way at the beginning he's like really friendly with you. I actually thought about being a doctor. I envy your professional, this kind of thing. And then it's gradually starting to unravel, isn't it, as it goes along? He's getting more and more horrible to him. He really is. Yeah. And after that first interview, O'Brien sends him a message on the comm system, doesn't he, and saying, Bashir says, "Oh, I thought he was a nice bloke," and he says, "Yeah, he's just been asking questions about you for 2 hours to me, you know." So it's clearly you that he thinks is the issue. But yeah, and I'd said to you, because you weren't aware of that it was William Sadler initially, who plays Death. You'll sank my battleship in Bogus Journey and Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey and Face the Music. Fantastic in that and fantastic in this as well. He comes back several times to play Sloane for the rest of the series, and suitably evil and nasty, but it's a great character. He plays it brilliantly. And that reveal at the end of Sloane and Section 31, you know that something's amiss, but you don't really see what it is, what's really truly going on. It's actually really quite clever, because they keep that reveal right until the very end, don't they? And he says, like, "Oh, you've got a little implant in your neck, and you know, I'll take it out. You can take it out if you want to, but it's coming out one way or the other." You know, we need that information, and all that information that's suddenly just dumped on you. Section 31 has been around forever, which, in hindsight, created some major in Star Trek, didn't it? Especially in Discovery and that. But at this point in time, Section 31 works. Couple of other little things I liked about it. I love the beginning where Odo, laughing at the predictability of humans, Chief O'Brien dislocates his shoulder, you know, and Odo's like, "Oh, let me guess, you've dislocated your shoulder again." And he says to Bashir as well, "Oh, let me guess, they're going to send you to this holiday planet for your conference. How predictable," and all that. He's really like, you know, he's really being a bit of an arsehole there, isn't he, for that moment in time. And I love the other bit as well where he asks for some food and he gets Worf's gawk on the plate. And he's like, "Oh, I hope you're enjoying my scones, Worf." You know? Yeah, it's a great episode. It really is, yeah. Really. Okay, so our fourth episode is In the Pale Moonlight. Basic plot is, in an attempt to goad the Romulans into war with the Dominion, Sisko enlists Garak to help him create false evidence of a plot to invade Romulus on the part of the Dominion. So, thoughts?
Well, right from the start, I love the way that this is set up. Like, the whole episode's just a captain's log, basically. And it keeps flicking back to him being like, "Oh god, am I going too far here? Like, is this right what I'm doing? Is any of this right?"
Yeah.
Like, that's the whole thing. And you hear him narrating the episode as well. And it's just the whole time while everything's going on, it's just like, am I doing the right thing? Like, is this okay? Even though, like, the Federation's like, "Yeah, that's fine, go for it." Yeah. The whole time he's like, "Can I live with this?" sort of thing. But then, the stuff with Garak and Sisko is so good in this. Yeah. It's so good. He just, like, Sisko gets pulled to some pretty dark places in this episode.
He does. He really does.
Like, he gets someone very dodgy out of jail to help make this false program. To
make the false recording,
They get the false recording and that. They have to go through a lot of shit to get it done. And then they get the Romulan there. And they're like, "Okay, this is the recording."
Renak, Senator Renak.
Yeah.
It's a fake!
The tension
Brilliant
in
line.
that moment, though, when you're like, "What?
Yeah.
What?
Because
How?
you don't see that coming, do you? Think, shit, how's he figured that out? You know, because Star Trek is one of those things where you assume that he's going to believe that it's real and everything, and he's going to go away and the Romulan's going to join the war and that's it.
So he's like, "Yo, I'm fucking off," and he leaves with it, and he's like, "Right, I'm telling them how you tried this fake," and then Sisko's just like, "Yeah, fuck, that's it, we've lost now. Like Romulans are gonna attack us or whatever, we've lost,
or join the Dominion or worse, or
But they get a message in at the end, and it says that the Dominion have destroyed that ship. And the scene where Sisko like runs in and just like fucking just
he goes
punches
into Garrett's
Garrick
shop,
in
doesn't
the
he?
face.
Yeah.
It's just like wow, okay. There's just a lot of wow in this episode.
And he says to him, doesn't he? He says, you know, you've lost. I can't remember exactly the wording of it, but he says, what's the price tag of being attached to this? You know, a criminal who's died, maybe your self-respect. You know, but and he says, I don't know what about you, but I'd call that a bargain. You know,
Yeah.
If it brings the Romulans into the war and potentially brings the end of the war about sooner, it's a price worth paying. And in his log at the end, he says, you know, if I had to do this all again, I would, because I can live with this. And then he pauses for a second, doesn't he? He goes, I can live with this. It's almost like he's saying, can I live with this?
Yeah.
And then he's like, computer, just erase that entire log. And then the end episode ends there.
Yeah.
You know, but you never really know how Sisko truly feels about it. He knows that he's gone to some really dark places. He's not happy about it at all. He has to bribe Quark to get him to shut up and not, you know, when, is it Graython Tolar or whatever the name of the criminal goes, she gets really drunk in the bar and tries to kill Quark, doesn't he? Knife him or something like that. And then he has to bribe Quark to not make an official report. And, the whole thing, the whole setup, it's like that 75 litres of biomimetic gel that Bashir has to get as well, and Bashir's like, I'd like to have that in writing, please, you know, because he's really quite concerned about what the hell is going on, you know. But all of these things being set in motion just to make this happen. I love this episode because, being an alternative knowledge researcher, I'm fascinated by how stories are sometimes based on real things. And I do know, because I was reading through some notes in the Deep Space Nine companion about it. Originally, the episode was called Patriot, and it was about they looked at things like the Vietnam War, the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which in here it says, in which North Vietnamese gunboats reportedly attacked US naval vessels. No, they didn't. It was a false flag event. Go and do your research. Go and learn your history. The whole thing was staged by the US military and the CIA. That's documented. They've actually admitted to that now. The declassified documents are out there from the CIA and the military and everything. So you have a false flag event basically. And what's very appealing about this episode, watching it, is it appeals to my sort of alternative knowledge funny bone. Bone. I won't say funny because there's nothing funny about it, but this idea that Sisko and Garak are creating a false flag event here, aren't they? They're basically saying, oh, the Dominion killed this senator because he had top secret classified information about the invasion of Romulus. So they had to kill him. Never happened. It was Garak that killed him. You know, and he didn't have a recording of the top secret conference planning the Romulus invasion, because what he had was a fake recording that didn't pass muster. So the explosion created the imperfections in the recording, as Garak says. So the whole thing was set up. It was a setup. Yeah. You know, it mirrors many things that have happened in real history, where the powers that be have set things in motion because they were politically, militarily, or sociologically convenient. They had to set the balls in motion on that event because it wouldn't have happened naturally otherwise. They had to set the ball in motion. Well, they see as their job to set the reel in motion for it. Interesting with this episode though, because it doesn't come from a place of like some deep dark agenda. It comes from a place of Sisko thinking this is the right thing to do. They keep putting up the casualty reports every day. Friends are dying, you know, people that we care about, they're dying every day. How can we stop this from happening? You know, logically bring the Romulans into the war, end the war a bit quicker. So that's the redeeming thing about Sisko in this episode, is it doesn't come from this deep, dark, shifty Section 31 type place or you know, anything like that. It comes from a place of him like, we need to end this. We need to stop the death. We need to stop the fighting. You know, this is the quickest way of making it happen, then we'll have to do it. You know, so it comes from his perspective anyway. It comes from a morally justifiable place. I don't know whether these things are ever morally justifiable, you know, war anyway, but I can see where they're trying to come from in this episode with Sisko. And again, it adds so much more colour to Sisko, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So many episodes in a row as well we've had this season. You know, Waltz is another one, really layering the depth to Sisko's character. Yeah. So that's really it in terms of what I wanted to say about this episode. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
That's basically it. It's just geniusly written, really. It's extremely well written. Very,
very well written, yeah, absolutely. I'm just trying to see, jog my memory on who it was that wrote it. Teleplay by Michael Taylor, story by Peter Allen Fields. So it wasn't the regulars on the show, you know, like your Ronald D. Moores and all that, you know. Regularly held up amongst the best episodes. I think the Star Trek fan club put it in their top 10 Star Trek episodes. I think one of the mainstream magazines, critic magazines, put it as like the best Deep Space Nine episode of the lot. So I think it's certainly up there. It's certainly up there in terms of it's certainly within my top 10 of Deep Space Nine episodes. Yeah. So we've got one more to go then. If we're done with that one, we'll go on to a real change of pace for this one.
Definitely.
Yeah. His Way. Basically, Odo finds out that Kira is going to visit Shakar, and he thinks that Kira and Shakar might be getting back together again. So he goes to, because we see the reveal in the beginning, Dr. Bashir's got this new holodeck program, which is Vegas in the 60s, and Vic Fontaine, the lounge singer, played by James Darren, who comes back many, many times after this. And he sees that Vic Fontaine's got like this sort of perceptions on life, you know, life, love, and all this kind of thing. He gives good advice about your love life and all this kind of thing, you know. So Odo basically decides to sort of take him up and say, look, teach me, be my Obi-Wan Kenobi, you know, be my mentor, you know, teach me in the language of love, you know, as he puts it in the episode, you know, teach me. And inadvertently, it brings out a fun side to Odo as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It loosens Odo up so much from this point onwards.
Yeah. I mean, you got him like singing with the captain, like playing piano.
Yeah, I love that scene. I think that scene is fantastic. You know, oh no, you can't take that away from me. You know, and Sisko's like singing along with him. You know, it's great. The scene with the piano where he's like, I don't play the piano, and he says, good, you know, don't worry about that. He says, just get into the vibe, get into the mood, you know. And you see him like this, you know, he's really like, he's really going for it, isn't he? You know, he's really loosening up. The twist of this episode is he says, like, I'm going to give you like a holographic version of Kira so you can practice on. Basically, what he's going to practice on, we'll leave that with. That never comes up in the episode, thank goodness. But you know, we'll leave this in the realms of innocence in here and just say it's like love. You know, like practicing the banter and all the rest of it. You know, how he's going to interact with her and all this kind of thing. And that doesn't work because she's sort of like very sort of like 60s. I think he says I had to use like the Russian version of Kira from Dr. Bashir's spy program and remove the Russian accent and all that. And then he says to him, I've got an even better one. She walks like Kira, she talks like Kira, she, you know, and he thinks it's a hologram, but it's the real thing. Yeah. It's the real Kira. Yeah. And then he's sort of like, you know, she's like, we can leave the holiday, you know, we can go in to one of the restaurants and all that. And Odo's like, oh, that won't be possible. You know, because you're a hologram. And he's like really humiliated, isn't he? Because he's like, thinks, oh, you know, I've been set up here good and proper. And, but the surprise is Kira's like, because Kira's angry about it as well. And she's like, no, we need to talk about this. And Odo's like, no. And she's like, yeah, we do need to talk about this. And he says, I'm tired of talking about my feelings and all that. And then he goes off and then they get together on the promenade, don't they? And they're like, right, should we go for dinner? And it's like, I suppose if you want to go dancing, there'll be some dancing, and then maybe if we dance, you want to kiss. And like, who needs kissing? Well, why don't we just do it now? And and that's it. Yeah. And from that point onwards, they're together. You know, it's it was long time coming.
Yeah, like the way that they sort of got together is like so fitting of both the characters.
Yeah,
like after seeing it that way, you couldn't imagine it happening a different way.
No, that's right. Yeah, that's right. And you think of all those times where he almost said something to her, you know, and things like that. And but no, with hindsight now, you think, yeah, absolutely, that was the best possible way. The actors weren't exactly happy with it, but they certainly enjoyed doing the episode anyway. They loved doing that episode, and yeah, I don't think they were completely sold on the idea of Odo and Kira being together. But the fans always wanted it. They always hoped that it would, you know, happen eventually. Took, well, years, you know. It was there was inklings of his love for her back in season 2, you know, much more openly in season 3. He admitted it in Heart of Stone in season 3. So it's 3.5 years easy of his unrequited love for her.
Yeah.
But really nice to see them together properly, you know, finally. Music as well, the setting, the Vegas thing, fantastic. I love all those songs, you know, the Rat Pack stuff and all that, and Sinatra and all that. And yeah, it's really good. The way they played the music over the end credits at the last bit, but it was like Vegas-y style rather than the normal.
Vic Fontaine was great as well. He's very enjoyable to see. Yeah.
He's a great character, isn't he?
Yeah.
James Darren, who was, I mean, he's been in many things. Before that, perhaps most famously amongst sci-fi fans, remembered for being in the Time Tunnel, the Irwin Allen science fiction series from the 60s. He had something of a musical career, James Darren did actually, but yeah, a bit of a low-key one, but you know, he had some success in singing and doing all that kind of thing. So it was fitting that they brought him along to do this. I think originally they were trying to get Frank Sinatra Jr., Frank Sinatra's son, to do it, but it didn't. It kind of fell through. But in hindsight, looking back on it now, you can't imagine anybody else playing Vic Fontaine.
Not at all, no.
It's nice when you introduce a character into a show like this so late in the game, but a very, very welcome one as well.
Yeah.
So, brilliant episode. So unless there's anything else, we'll go into our ratings then. So we'll start with Statistical Probabilities.
Yeah.
I'll give it a score out of 10.
I come prepared.
Statistical Probabilities. Have you? I haven't. So I know them though. I do know them. I haven't got them written down, but I know my scores.
Statistical Probabilities, I give it 8.5.
Oh right, okay, yeah, right. We often tend to be very similar, don't we? Yeah. I'm going to give Statistical Probabilities an 8.5, like you as well. Yeah. It's a good episode. Yeah. Okay, so our next one is Far Beyond the Stars.
Yeah, 10.
It's a 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So Inquisition.
I weren't quite sure about this one, but I went with 8.5 as well.
Yeah, it's 8.5 for me as well.
I don't think it's quite as good as Statistical Probabilities, but
it's a different way. It's in a different way, isn't it? Yeah, different types of things. Yeah. What it loses in one is yeah. But it's still an 8. Yeah, 8.5. Yeah. Okay, so in the Pale Moonlight.
Another easy 10.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't. We always have to say this, don't we? We don't discuss our scores with each other. Yeah, it's a 10. Yeah. I think we might deviate slightly on His Way, but we'll. So what's your score for His Way then?
I'll give it His Way an 8.
Really?
Yeah, I enjoyed watching it a lot. It's like it was just a really like chill, relaxing, nice episode to watch. Okay,
I'm gonna give His Way a 10.
Really?
I think it's a fantastic episode. It's everything. They are my favourite characters along with Sisko. I waited so long to see that happen between them two.
Yeah. And
the way it was done as well, the setting, the music, I'm a sucker for all that kind of thing. It was perfect for me. It was just everything it could possibly be. So it's just a different kind of 10, isn't it? It's just a different kind of 10, but it's still a 10 for me, yeah. Okay then, so that's it then. Is there anything else we wanted to say before we sign off?
I think that's it.
All right, then. We're going to be a bit of a long video, I think, with this one, but we'll see.
Yeah.
But for now, we'll say thank you very much for joining us. Hope you've enjoyed this video. I've certainly enjoyed doing it.
Yeah.
And, Dan and I will see you again very, very soon. Take care for now.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
bye.